find a seed of love. Plant it where you can. Plant it where you can. Wait for it to grow. Wait for it to grow. Don't disturb it. Don't expect to see. Don't expect to see. Changes overnight. Changes overnight. If you wait a while. If you wait a while, you'll find new life. Sunshine will come, raindrops will fall, your little seed will grow again. Soon there will be a day in spring when your seed blossoms and grows.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, all this talking about nature and life cycles is putting me in a very good mood, and you won't believe this. It's such a funny thing. I had just recorded my assembly on the egg to chicken life cycle, and do you remember I showed you this evidence that the starling chicks had hatched? It's so fragile. Well, just as I was preparing for today's assembly, I had a message from Mrs. Jennings, because we often talk about the nature in our gardens. And she just said, Mrs. Scardyfield, I think the starling babies have hatched because I can hear them from my kitchen. And like me, Mrs. Jennings' starlings have chosen her guttering on her roof to make their nest. So it's a wonderful thing in nature that the same thing happens at the same time all around the countryside. I just think that's amazing that probably, and how do they know? How do they know when it's the right time to nest? And I don't know. It blows my mind. Nature is a wonderful thing. Now, today's life cycle and today's assembly was inspired by Jensen in year 6, because Jensen was very pleased to tell me that the frogs are back. We're very lucky in our school that the frogs have found a quiet corner in our school where they like to nest. And then we end up with lots and lots of frogs, and they keep, just very sensibly, keep away from the playgrounds, but Jensen knows just where to find them, and he found some, and we had to talk about the fact that the frogs needed to stay outside, which Jensen understands. So Jensen, you've inspired me today. I haven't got a frog because frogs need to stay outside. I haven't got one of those in my hand, and I couldn't bring you any frog spawn because I couldn't hold that into my hands either. But if you do go to a park, Shibden Park, or somewhere else, do have a look in the water and see if you can see any frog spawn, because it is the time of year when frog spawn is happening and new frogs, new life is being made. So today's life cycle is from tadpole to frog. Now that does not look like a British frog to me. That looks like a more, do you think, Elise?
Yeah, I don't think we have them.
I think that looks more like an exotic frog from somewhere a little bit warmer. But let's find out how new frogs are made from tadpole to frog. Now then, so far in the animal kingdom, we have had birds, and birds had wings, feathers, and laid eggs. And then we had plants, and plants had roots and a stem. And what was the third thing? What was the third thing? Oh, I'm going to have to go back into my book to check, because it seems to always come in threes, doesn't it? What was the third thing that they had? Roots and stems and leaves. Of course they need leaves, because that's how they make their food, isn't it? It's the leaf part of the plant that makes the food. Well, a frog is from a different part of the animal kingdom. It's definitely not a bird. Does anybody know which part of the animal kingdom the frog is from? It's from a very special part of the animal kingdom. A frog is an amphibian. It spends part of its life living in water and part of its life on land. Toads and newts are also amphibians. Toads walk or crawl, but frogs jump. A newt has a long, thin body and a tail. And again, if you look really carefully in ponds and things, you can see newts. And all amphibians lay their eggs in water. They live in wet places, often near ponds or lakes. I'm not quite sure whether it's quite wet where our frogs are, but it's not really near a pond. Perhaps one of the houses nearby has got a pond, and that attracts the frogs. The story of a frog. A young frog is called a tadpole. It looks very different to an adult frog. The small animal begins its life as an egg. So we had eggs. They have that in common with the birds, don't they? The amazing story of how it becomes an adult frog is called its life cycle. From egg to tadpole to an adult frog. So again, 3 stages in this life cycle. From the egg to the tadpole to the adult frog. And it's an amazing metamorphosis, isn't it, between those stages. There we go. Let's see what happens first. It is spring and time for frogs to mate. Males croak loudly so the females can find them. A male holds on to a female and she lays her eggs. It fertilizes the eggs, and only fertilized eggs grow into tadpoles, just like the hen's eggs. The eggs are as soft as jelly. They stick together in a big clump called frog spawn. The frog spawn swells and floats to the surface of the water, which is why you can sometimes see it. Little clear jelly-like spheres with a black dot in the middle, which will become a tadpole and then a new frog. Inside the eggs, the adult frogs then swim away. They don't take care of the eggs, so that's different, isn't it, to the hen, because the hen, remember, had to sit on the eggs and really take care of them. Many of the eggs are eaten by fish and other pond animals, but some survive and their tadpoles keep growing. And after a few weeks, the eggs hatch. They open up and a tadpole wriggles out of each one. And a female frog, guess how many eggs she might lay at one time? Remember, the hens just laid 1 a day. Tadpoles, frogs, can lay hundreds of eggs at a time. And inside each egg, a tadpole is growing and it feeds on a small yolk. So just like the chick inside the chick's egg, it's the yolk that gives them that nourishment. There they are, little tiny tadpoles just starting to emerge. Tadpoles are tiny when they hatch, but they quickly grow. Each tadpole has a long tail which it uses to swim. It has feathery gills on each side of its head, and a tadpole uses its gills to breathe underwater. Which other animals do we know that have gills to breathe underwater? Fish. To begin with, tadpoles just eat small green water plants. Tadpoles eat and grow and eat and grow. They grow faster when they live in warm water with plenty of food. And after a few weeks, the gills have disappeared. Now the tadpoles can't breathe underwater and they eat pond animals such as insects and water fleas. Fleas or flies? Water fleas. Oh, there you go. So here's the changing tadpole. I think you can see the gills on that picture, but the gills don't last for long because frogs, even though they can live in water, they're not fish. They can't breathe underwater in that way. They don't have gills when they're adults. The big change. When they are about 7 weeks old, tadpoles begin to change into frogs. They grow 4 legs and their tails shrink. They swim to the surface of the pond to breathe because they don't have their gills anymore. The tadpole's back legs grow first, then its front legs begin to grow, and as its legs grow longer, the tail grows shorter. And the tadpoles now look like tiny frogs, and they can leave the pond. Isn't that just amazing? So the tail disappears, it starts to grow legs, and then it's time to come up from under the water onto the surface of the pond and onto the land. And then, I love this word, then they're called froglets. The little frogs keep growing and their tails disappear. They are now called froglets. The froglets stay in or near water. They feed on small insects which they catch with their long, sticky tongues that dart out like that and catch the insects. They can swim, crawl and climb onto the floating leaves of lilies. And when they are bigger, the froglets move away from the pond. They find a safe place under some plants where they can hide. So I think our frogs must have come away from a nearby source of water and found just the right place in our school grounds. Here they are, the little froglets. And they are very, very small. And it gets to a point in the year when we go near the pond in our park where we have to be really careful where we're walking because little froglets can be moving away from the pond to find somewhere safe to hide. And then adult frogs spend most of their time on land, so you're more likely to see a frog on the land than you are in the water. They rest during the day, and in the evening they hunt for, and you think what they might like to eat, frogs. What do you think? They like insects, slugs, and worms. There we go. Many frogs have green, grey or brown skin, and it can be hard to see them when they sit still on plants or under a pile of dead leaves, and this is called camouflage. Camouflage. Frogs can make huge leaps to catch food with their long tongues, and camouflage helps a frog to hide from animals that want to eat it, like birds. I think birds quite like eating frogs. There's a brilliant picture of a frog there with his long sticky tongue trying to catch an insect. And then have a look closely at that picture. Can you see a different kind of a frog there, camouflaged in the leaves? And again, isn't nature wonderful? Goodness me. Back to the pond. So this is the cycle part. So they started in the water and they breathed underwater. Then they became land creatures. And then there's a time when they go back to the pond, because frogs hibernate in winter. This is because there is little food to eat and the weather is cold. When frogs hibernate, they fall into a deep sleep to save energy. They hibernate under rocks, in burrows, or in ponds. So there's a hibernating frog there in a deep sleep to save energy. And in spring, just like it is now, frogs return to the pond where they were hatched. So our frogs that we've got living on our school grounds will make their way back to the same pond that they were born, where they were hatched. Isn't that amazing? Not a different pond, not next door's pond. They will go back to the very same pond. And this is where the adult frogs will mate. And soon the story of the life cycle will begin again. Goodness me. It's just those little facts for me that just I find amazing. The fact that they go back to the same pond. Some final pictures of frogs. There we go. So we must be really careful. If we come across frogs in our school, we need to leave them. We need to leave them because they'll be busy. They'll either be busy looking for their food, and it would really frighten them if we disturb them or pick them up. So leave them where they are if you come across them. That's how we can care for nature. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our life cycles this week. Remember, which was your favourite? Was it from egg to chicken? Was it from seed to sunflower? Or was it the one that we've had today, from tadpole to frog? If any of you... Hello, Elise. Do you have a fact?
Yes, I do actually.
Oh, excellent. What's your fact?
Well, I was just thinking, you know, the frog on the front of that book.
Yes, let me find it.
If you
This
can
one.
hold it up.
There are. Yes, have you found out what kind of frog he is?
I have. He's
Fantastic.
called a red-eyed tree frog.
Well, I can see why he's called a red-eyed frog. A red-eyed tree frog. Any further information about where he lives?
He's found in places like Mexico and kind of Central America.
Central and Southern America.
Yeah.
Wow, so there you go. He's a red-eyed tree frog. But I suspect his life cycle is probably the same as the frogs that we get in the United Kingdom. Thank you for the fact, Elise.
No problem.
It's a red-eyed tree frog. If anyone's doing life cycles or plants in general and you'd like to borrow these wonderful books of mine, please do let me know and I'll take them into school and keep them there. But yeah, what an exciting week's learning in our assemblies. Have a brilliant rest of the day. Enjoy your Thursday and I will see you very soon. Take care. Bye for now.